Let's talk about perfection. The idea of this podcast is, in fact, to show that perfection is not a dead concept, is not even something which is related to completeness. Perfection is not the end, is not something which is finished. So, normally we should think that perfection is a kind of limit, maybe even a boundary of something, of a process, of an idea. The fact that something is perfect doesn't mean that it is finished. So we should think perfection as a tool of the mind to do something which is not just better than another thing, than a previous one, but just, in fact, good. So, is goodness perfection? This is a problem. Is perfection perfectible? I mean, does perfection has an evolution? And we can see, in fact, that this is correct. There is an evolution in perfection, and this is a proof of the idea that perfection is alive. So we use perfection in many fields, even in religion. But for example, in mathematics, perfect numbers is not something which is related to the end. So we have also perfection in chemistry, and is something which is related to stability. So the problem is that perfection seems to be, for many of us, a system which represents an equilibrium. But perfection doesn't need to be an equilibrium, even a state. So the perfection of an object in space is not necessarily related to the perfection of this object in time. So imagine that you have a perfect object, but there is a movement. So in time is not necessarily in a perfect position, but we don't care about that. The idea is that something which is perfect can be not only a name, not only a limit, but a fact. So, in this manner, to think about perfection, we can say that perfection can be a path, even a network. I mean, something which is important not to approach, but to touch it. We had the same problem with infinity, and it was solved by Cantor. So his idea was simple. Can we touch infinity? And if we do that, do we have a unique infinity? And the first answer is, of course, yes, which was a revolution at that time. And the second one is, of course, no, which is still a revolution right now. So we can imagine that we have many paths of perfection and not only one. This is not a direction, it's only a path. And this path can be embedded in a network, which is not necessarily finite. There is no problem even for that. So we can say, for example, that a group in mathematics can be considered as perfect in its structure. So we can imagine many of them. I have in mind right now the sporadic ones, but the idea is, do we have only one perfection? And the point of this podcast is, in fact, to prepare our mind for many perfections. So, perfection is not unique. In reality, we can say that perfection has the property of ubiquity.